The deer in the headlights.
Thank you again for your participation in today's events. We are sure that you're pleased with what you've heard this morning. Had some great panels and had a very good lunch speaker. Got lots of information. We could have a whole stack of homework if we could just take home all the numbers that we've had to crunch. These are amazing, and more amazing than probably most of us ever realized. I want to mention some more of our sponsors: Eagle Safety, Patriot Automation, Guycon, K-Stole Solutions, Control Equipment, and I think that I maybe misspoke on one this morning, Texas Midwest Community Network. And we appreciate your sponsorships and appreciate your participation. And at this time, I'm going to turn the panel over to Phillips, to Congressman Phillips, to moderate and bring us up.
Well, thank you. It's can y'all hear okay? Good. It's great to be with you. My name's Larry Phillips. I represent Grayson, Fannin, and Delta counties. That's Sherman, Denison, Bonham, and Cooper. Bonham's home of Sam Rayburn, and Mr. Speaker, as they would call him, or Mr. Sam, still lives large over in that part of Texas. We have some traditional oil and gas production, but we're starting to see a little bit more, but of course nothing like out here or other parts of Texas. We have a panel that's going to talk different aspects of transportation, and you can read what it says. How do we and will we transport energy in Texas? What sources of funding are available to the cities and counties impacted by the energy surge? All things transportation is what I kind of get consumed with. I was in Marshall, Texas on Monday talking about transportation. Had to go back to Bonham to speak to a group, and then was in Austin yesterday on a funding committee hearings. We can find out how are we going to fund transportation going forward. And the great honor to come out here to San Angelo and visit about transportation with you guys. So it's a major issue for us, and I think the lunch speaker did a fantastic job setting up how important transportation is for all of us. And I think, I couldn't quite hear some of the questions. I don't know who asked that. Someone was talking about the road to Midland. I don't know who that was. Was that you? And it's hard for me to hear, but it's a safety issue too. I mean, for at the end of the day, for us, forget moving product, moving whatever. We need safe roads, and that needs to be a priority at the state of Texas for all of us. What I'm going to do is I'm going to let each of the panel members introduce themselves, take a few minutes to share what they have, the topic that they're going to talk about, and share a little bit with you, and then I'll close out and talk about a few of the kind of statewide issues, and really why do we have some of the funding issues that we have in the state of Texas. So, and we've got a major and a general, which is kind of fun. We have a major and general. General, do we want to start with you, or are you leaving?
He's leaving.
Not enough.
And if each of the panel members will introduce yourself, to tell a little bit what you do and why you're here, and then let us have it.
Are we hot on the mics?
Yes.
Good? Okay. Thank you, Chairman. My name is Joe Weber, and I feel privileged to be able to serve as the Executive Director of Texas Department of Transportation. I've been there almost 4 months, and as I tell everybody, I know everything about transportation. Seriously, though, TxDOT is a great organization. It's soon to be almost 100 years old and has done some great things throughout our state. It was amazing to me yesterday as I checked in the hotel to note that yesterday was a big day in the history of San Angelo, Texas. 100 years ago yesterday, San Angelo got its first traffic light. And so I would tell you that this entire area has come a long way, as has our state. One of the reasons I came today certainly was for this summit and these meetings, but also I have been out in our Brownwood district as well as this district today looking at the energy roads. And I told our district engineer today that I'm going to go back in a very depressed mood. And the reason why I say that is because we've got some problems out there, as all of you know. I will highlight it by saying I just got back from a conference, a national conference, with about 22 other heads of their departments, state departments of transportation, and they wish they had the problems that we have. So I guess with those problems certainly come challenges, and I think that those are things that we really need to address out here. And I go back to what the chairman said about safety. For many years, I thought the most dangerous place on the earth was on the deck of an aircraft carrier, and I'm not so sure anymore. Having been out on some of these roads and watching our TxDOT employees work with some of these vehicles running by them at 65 and 70 miles an hour with a total of 3 to 4 feet between those workers and the vehicle. And that's very, very important. And I've talked to all of our people, our district engineers, that we really have to focus on safety. Many of you know that over 3,300 citizens of the state die on our roadways. A lot of it's choices they make. Some of them are bad choices, but as we work through a lot of these infrastructure issues, particularly in the energy sector, where those roads were never built to do what they're doing, and we're trying to make them do right now. We always have to have safety on our minds, and I will tell you, and I've told my staff, there's not one person's life that's more important than getting somewhere 20 minutes earlier or whatever. So with that in mind, that is important. Now, the rest of the mission at TxDOT certainly is, as it says, to work with others to establish safe and reliable transportation. And I will tell you, since I've been here, I know that in 1991, somewhere about that time, our Texas legislature said we were no longer the Texas Highway Department. We were the Texas Department of Transportation. And I think as we look to the future, now and to the future, we've got to start looking at transportation in this state as a system. And I know we're going to be building a lot of roads and a lot of bridges and laying a lot of asphalt for a long time. And I'm not an engineer, but I got great engineers who know how to do that. But we're going to have to be focused on transportation as a system, a multimodal thing. And my fear, Chairman, is what I don't want to happen is 2 weeks ago I went out on the LBJ freeway and stood there and looked at that marvelous 13.5 miles of tremendous road that's been put out there. And I shut my eyes and I said, if I stood up here 30 years from now, will it look like our current I-35 in Austin? And I don't want that to happen. And I think the key to that not happening is to make sure we're looking at all modes of transportation, not only modes of transportation, but the culture of how the people of Texas view transportation. And that is going to have to change, particularly in our urban areas and some of those other areas now with the congestion and mobility problems. We're going to have to really look at that, how we get to work, when we go to work, and all these other things. And TxDOT, people will say, well, what the heck does that have to do with TxDOT? You build roads and bridges. And I said, well, we do, and as I said, we will for a long time. But we need to take the lead in making sure we're doing the right kind of research for the future. And it's not for us. We won't see a lot of this, but our children and grandchildren, to make sure that as this state grows, and as you know, the population could well double by 2050, the economic generators at our ports along the coast and our major cities, what's going on right here in West Texas, Southwest Texas, we're going to have a lot more economic generators. You double the population with that, and it's going to be an issue. Funding, that wasn't the first thing that was on my mind, and maybe it should have been, but we've got bigger challenges out in this district than funding. We have 18% turnover of TxDOT people out here in these districts, and there's a reason for that, in that the economy is booming out here, and guess who pays more than TxDOT in many cases. So we've got to keep that in mind, and we've got to look how we surge our equipment, our people, and activities to get a handle on this. And what I'm really afraid of, and I'm going to go back and work with my staff after what I've seen the last couple of days, is we may have to look at going into some surge operations with both people and equipment on some of these roads out here to get some of this done, because I'm afraid we're going to get so far behind playing whack-a-mole on a lot of this out here that it's going to be impossible to catch up, particularly if this play lasts 15 or 20 years. The money situation, I've said this before, I've been on the earth 64 years. I've never met anybody who told me they had enough money. It's ironic that we find here our state is in the biggest economic boom, I think, in its history. And what is the theme? We don't have enough money. So I'm convinced that we're never going to have enough money. But what is important to me is that the money that we do have, and this legislature has been very generous to TxDOT in providing them the tools and the funding, the ability to acquire funding, along with our federal, our Texas folks up in Washington. So we're going to have enough money to get by in the next 2 or 3 years. But what we do and where we spend it is going to be very, very important. So I'll leave you with that and am prepared to answer any questions as we get through the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, General. Elizabeth.
I'm Liz Grindstaff, and I am the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Texas Pacifico Railroad. And I am here, I suppose, to talk about rail transportation in our region. Our little railroad is, quite frankly, an anomaly, I think, if you look at the way railroads operate in the state and throughout the country. This railroad is owned, actually, or is operated by a company called Grupo Mexico. And Grupo has a number of different holdings in Mexico, including mining activity. That's probably about 80% of our revenues, and then about 20% are in railroads. And I'm sorry, we're sitting in front of my slides, but in Mexico, Grupo operates as Ferromex and Ferrosur. In the U.S., they have an operating concession with Texas Pacifico, or as Texas Pacifico Railroad, with the state of Texas. So actually, you as taxpayers own the rail and the land that it sits on. I mentioned we have an operating concession that we were awarded in 2001 by the state. This is my landlord sitting next to me. And even though I hate turning my back to an Aggie General, I'm going to switch around here a little bit so I can see my own slides. This is the line of Texas Pacifico Railroad. We're approximately 400 miles long from somewhere near Coleman, Santa Ana area, known as the San Angelo Junction, and then you move south and west to Presidio. So as you can see, we have a very fortuitous location as it relates to the southern and eastern edge of the Permian. I have some slides I'll show you kind of where our densities are, but I want to show you that we go through Ballinger, Miles, and San Angelo. And when we began operating in 2001, this was really kind of our customer base. Most of it was the transportation of wheat out of our area, and then some steel movement in San Angelo. And so now there is this incredible explosion from Barnhart to Big Lake, McCamey, Rankin, Fort Stockton. Right now, our customer base stops at Fort Stockton. I would imagine that will change in the near future, but not necessarily relative to the energy industry. In 2000, this shows a graph of what was going on in 2001 to about 2011. We were moving about 3,000 cars per year. Our company was losing $1.5 million per year. And then all of a sudden, something happened in 2012, and we went from about 3,000 cars previous years to just under 11,000. And then in 2013, we finished with 23,000 cars. So I think you can see that our increases are rather significant. Last year, in 2013, we were actually projected to complete the year moving about 30,000 cars. There was this little change in the spreads on crude, which impacted that, but the sand remains strong, and sand is getting stronger. Frac sand, frac sand, frac sand, frac sand. And until Tim Dove is smart enough to figure out how to push this stuff through a pipeline, I would imagine that our railroad will continue to move frac sand. Most of our product, or what we're moving, is actually coming out of Wisconsin, Iowa, and Illinois. We do know that there is sand mined in our region, but most of what is carried on the rail cars coming into the region is a very, would you say, prime, very high grade sand that is perfectly spherical. We also have customers that move ceramic sand. As I say, I guess God couldn't make the most perfect sand, so man had to create it. And we also move ceramic sand as well as resin-coated sand into the well areas. This is a graph that shows the density. Of course, everything comes into us right now through the San Angelo Junction, and then you'll see our numbers fall off rather dramatically at Big Lake. Big Lake, Barnhart, San Angelo right now are our largest transloading areas for sand. It is amazing every week about more facilities coming in, and these are not small mines, these are not small transloaders. These are transloaders that are in every other play in the country. As we heard earlier, they're relocating resources and they want their place in the Permian. Now, many of them are also operating somewhere along I-20 or on the UP lines. There's clearly other rail locations in our region, but they still want their place in the Barnhart, Big Lake to Fort Stockton area. Commodities, if you look at our mix, this shows you what we expect to move, or expect to move through 2014. Sand makes up 76% of what we do, and crude was projected at the beginning of the year to be about 15%. So roughly 90% of what we are carrying right now is directly related to the oil industry. Grain a little bit of steel, and a few other ag products make up our commodities. Just to show you kind of what did change though in the mix, when the spreads fell off at the end of 2013, it affected our 14 projections. Crude, we expect to come back to rail very slowly, but we are seeing interest in that. We have some major companies that have facilities on our line, but as you know, pipeline is an excellent way to carry the crude. We agree with that. We see the rail as being sort of a complementary component of the transportation system, and what rail gives someone moving crude, whether it's a marketer or the E&P that moves their own, is we give you a directional source or resource. There are new refineries coming online on the West Coast, and so our producers want to see some opportunity for redirecting that crude, just again, as it pertains to the market pricing. So again, I told you this crude fell off at the beginning of the year. So really what our actual count was down. In June, we were at about 11,000 cars. We also had a very, very slow start to the beginning of the year because Wisconsin, Illinois, Iowa, again, we're seeing one of the worst winters they'd ever had on record. And so sand was very slow. But what this means is we have production that has a lot of catching up to do. And so our projections, again, stay very strong. And we expect to finish the year probably 27,000 cars, somewhere to 30, again, just depending on what the BNSF and the other connecting railroads can do in getting the product to us. Someone told me the other day, in 2007, the state of Wisconsin had 5 sand mines permitted. In 2014, there are 115 sand mines permitted and about 5 other permits on record. So literally the state of Wisconsin is moving to West Texas. And that's a good thing because what that sand pops out of the ground is something quite valuable. Most of our customers will tell you that a well these days, they'll use about a unit train of sand per well. That's 100 cars of sand. That is essentially 100 tons per car times 100. So that is how important the frac sand is to the drilling industry. I think probably one of the most interesting parts of our company is the fact that we are Mexican-owned, a U.S. company operating in Texas, but we do have, of course, strong ties to Mexico. That's our parent sister companies is Ferromex. This shows kind of what is going on in Mexico. This was written by a reporter from the Dallas Morning News, and it talks about the plays, the shale plays in Mexico, in Coahuila and other states just to the south of this Permian region. There's great expectation, and as you know, there's going to be a change in how Pemex works. So many people sitting in this room will be looking toward some activity in Mexico and some investment. I'm going to show you my map again because, as I told you, we go from Fort Stockton down to Alpine to Presidio. A few years ago, the bridge at Presidio burned. Actually, it burned twice. I think they call it arson. And if you can see this, this is actually the side that remains is the Mexican side. It was a concrete structure, and the U.S. side was the old timber creosoted bridge. And so on 2 different occasions, it was set afire, and someone successfully burned it down. It is the responsibility of Texas Pacifico to restore that bridge to a functional system. And with the help of our partners at TxDOT, we are doing just that. This bridge is now in the design phase and is expected to have the blessing of the Corps of Engineers in the fall. The drawings will then be passed to Texas Pacifico, and it's our responsibility to go get a bridge rebuilt and again functioning. So with the oil play, the potential there, the movement of frac sand, it's really kind of unknown what the potential is. I will tell you that we are working on a market study with Texas Transportation Institute to really look and understand what the potential is here. We're also doing an economic impact study so that we can be able to defend ourselves when the state looks at us for funding or future funding. I will say, and Representative Darby is here and he's busy talking in the back. He said last night, this is a railroad that Rob Janelle helped save. And I don't think there's anyone in this room that would dispute what our West Texas legislators have done to really look out and protect the economy of West Texas. But Representative Drew Darby has really raised this baby and has been very, very effective at dealing with other West Texas legislators in bringing resources to us. As I pointed out, we are something that we don't own the asset. The state of Texas does. All we can do is operate it. So it's really something that we have to do together to be successful. And we're very pleased to be a part of this conference and the success of the economy in West Texas.
Thank you, Liz. And, just so you all know, and what General Weber talked about, a few sessions ago, we that in the House Transportation, and I know the Senate, I think Senator Williams is here somewhere, we said, TxDOT, you need to step up and, have a rail division. So they had some rail people, but now they have a rail division. And this is the very reason why, to help us with rail, not only this rail, but the rail that you see in cities, and we have some other rail. The federal government has certain aspects, but we need to help encourage rail. Think about how many trucks of sand are off your roads. Think about how bad it would be had all those need to be transported through here by a truck. And this before the last session, we said, TxDOT, you need to get a maritime division. We were one of the few coastal states without a maritime division. And our ports are amazing economic engines. They take and will take what's produced here and the whole infrastructure around the petrochemical area. We're all connected. And so now TxDOT has a maritime division, and we're going to see we need to marry these modes, as the general talked about. Deb, do you want to tell us who you are, who you represent, maybe we know you, and share from what I say the industry's point of view about transportation?
I'm Deb Mamula. I'm the Executive Vice President for the Texas Oil and Gas Association, or TXOGA. TXOGA represents about 5,000 members, all the way from production through refining, so all sectors of the industry, including a vast majority of all the mileage of pipelines in the ground. So we support rail. As she said, it's really hard to push sand through a pipeline. One 50-mile pipeline can reduce truck traffic by 165,000 miles per day. That's a lot, but it's going to be hard to push that frac sand, and we do use some frac sand. So we are supportive of a very diverse mechanism or modes of transportation. I am looking for that flying car. I think it would be a lot easier to get out to West Texas if we had that. So let's start that. Can we do that, Mr. Chairman? Would you ask the TxDOT to do that?
I think they've got that under development.
Okay, good. I watched the Jetsons a long time ago, and I'm still waiting for that to come to fruition. Our members' number one priority when it comes to transportation is safety. The second priority is safety. The third priority is safety. And as the general said, some of these roads were not built for this type of traffic, especially if you have more than one vehicle on the road going in opposite directions at the same time. We are very aware of that. And as you heard at lunchtime, Mr. Dove said that they look at a 10-year plan when they're developing some of these areas. I'm hoping that we can share some of that information with TxDOT and become educated on their process, and we educate them on our process so that we can, as a state, prioritize better where some of this funding is going so that we can ensure that we do continue to have safe roads. I am going to have the opportunity to do a little campaigning right now. There are some ballot initiatives that I would say vote no on. The one coming up in November called Prop 1, the statewide ballot initiative, constitutional amendment to provide additional funding to TxDOT for roads. Vote yes. Vote yes. And I'll tell you why. There's no new fees, there's no new taxes, and there's no debt to the state. This is taking oil and gas severance dollars and diverting some of that from the Economic Stabilization Fund, or what we call the Rainy Day Fund, and putting that in TxDOT's hands to ensure that we have safer roads in Texas. So vote yes on Prop 1. And we are trying to raise some funding to actually ensure that people are hearing about this proposition and voting in on November 4th. It is a very, very important election. Get out there and do it. It's important for our state. So,
Thank you very much. Now we're going to hear from a major, from a general all the way down to a major, and but he's the one with the gun, so and he's the one that a lot of, well, just tell us about what you do. And he gets to come to my committee to testify in a couple of weeks, so hopefully he's at least nice to me today and his comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Chris Nordlow. I'm a major for the Texas Highway Patrol. I work in commercial vehicle enforcement, so when I'm talking here, you'll hear me say CVE. That's what that is, commercial vehicle enforcement. I work for the chief of the Highway Patrol, who is also an Aggie, in class of '81. And anyway, we've got nothing going on in DPS, so all's good.
Done.
We've been blessed by the legislature to be able to pay our troopers a little bit better right now, and so we're having a good hiring. We're going through some good hiring times right now, where we're actually being able to compete with some of the other larger police agencies like SAPD and Austin PD. So we're gaining in numbers, and that's good. Where we're stressed is that we have, for one, a huge border initiative right now. We're rotating 175 troopers, and this is just Highway Patrol, 175 Highway Patrol troopers to the border every week, to spend a week down there trying to interfere with the cartel's ability to move drugs and people. So what that means, and that's also our tactical marine unit. You may know or may not know, we've got 7 tactical marine boats. 6 is a big one, 37 footers, and we now have a smaller shallow water boat that goes in the places the other ones can't, trying to deter this. They're stationed all the way from Victoria down to the valley. We also send our criminal investigative division and our ranger recon units to the border. So it's actually, I speak from a uniform side, but realistically DPS is throwing a whole lot of assets and trying to interfere with the cartels down in the Rio Grande Valley. But what that means to every one of us is that we're pulling troopers from all over the state to make that happen. We just simply don't have enough troopers in the valley to maintain our routine patrol and support that. So in addition to that, we're doing surge operations in the Eagle Ford Shale, in the Permian Basin, and in the Anadarko Shale, which is up what they call the East Panhandle side. What's good about that is that these are remote places, and a lot of, Midland's not remote if you live in Midland, but if you're in Carrizo, if you're not from Carrizo Springs, you're not likely to go there unless you're assigned to go down there. It's just, there's not a whole lot of opportunity. We can send a trooper there and he'll transfer out in a year because there's very limited economic opportunity, especially if he's married to support a family, right? Midland, he's going to have housing issues. How many people know that housing is expensive, right? It's real expensive for a new trooper that we send out of the academy to go there. So it's not simply a matter of being able to say, okay, we're gonna put 3 full-time employee positions in Tilden in McMullen County, because we won't have anybody transfer in. We've got one guy down there right now, and he grew up there. That's why he's there. But to put a partner down there for him, we'd be hard pressed to find one. So we actually have to ship troopers in, like we're doing with the border. We're doing the same thing in task forces to help reduce crashes, help protect the infrastructure for TxDOT, and make a safer driving environment for Texans. And the success, I'll tell you the success there. When I was the captain in Corpus Christi when we started the Eagle Ford Shale surge back in 08 and 09, and we were seeing about a 45% vehicle out of service rate. Whenever we catch a commercial vehicle, there's certain violations that put them out of service. And in other words, we say you can't operate further until you fix this problem, right? We stop a truck and he doesn't have any brake lights. We say you can't go farther until you fix those brake lights. Okay, so there are certain violations like that are safety related, and we say it's out of service until you get it fixed. And the Eagle Ford Shale, when we started, it was about a 45% out of service rate on the vehicles. In other words, 45% of the time when one of the troopers gets a truck stopped, he was placing it out of service. That's a lot. When the state average is 20, right? And we have got that down to both the Permian Basin and the Eagle Ford Shale, down to right about 29%. So the trucks are aware. The major carriers, they don't want that. It creates problems for them. It creates insurance issues. You shut a truck down, the carrier's not making any money with that truck. So there's an economic incentive to keep your trucks running and operational. So, and I'm saying that because industry is they want good trucks too. The Anadarko, however, we consistently are still seeing a 51% vehicle out of service rate. And here again, it goes down to people. We have 9 CV troopers covering 15 counties.
It's the people from Oklahoma.
That's right. So, OU, right? Blame it on that. But anyway, we get 9 CV troopers up there in charge of 15 counties. You can see how it would be difficult to cover that area. 51% regularly in the Anadarko. Now, in addition to the out of service rates, crashes are what we're really honed in on, and we're seeing 100%, 200% in a couple of counties, 1,000% increase in crashes. Now that's all relative. If you're used to having 10 crashes a year and you go to 100, that's a big increase percentage-wise, but it's a problem that we're trying to address. Now looking at that, people they see the trucks going down the road and they say, well, there's the problem. But that's not entirely accurate. The trucks being there contribute to the problem because they're intermingled with passenger vehicles. What we know is that 70% of the commercial involved crashes are actually caused by passenger vehicles. All right, 70% of the crashes involving an 18-wheeler are actually caused by a 4-wheeler, and there's a reason for that, because people are distracted because of distracted driving, driver error. Distracted driving aggressive driving, driving under the influence, texting while driving, exactly. See, it was distracting. You answer that for me. The light work. No, yeah, exactly right. And even amongst the 30% that are caused by the commercial vehicle, again, it's driver error for the most part. Distracted driving, aggressive driving, driving under the influence, things of that nature. So that's where we want to tackle the problem. That's what we've been doing. We've actually been using undercover cars to spot aggressive drivers. We've used aircraft down in to spot it. We've had incredible success spotting aggressive drivers, people passing in no passing zones. In fact, I was on a task force down in McMullen County, and I saw a pickup truck pass 3 18-wheelers in a no passing zone. So I caught him. He was a safety man for a trucking company. You can't write that one. But what we are asking the legislature for an increase in personnel, because these surges are causing more work and less work in other areas of the state. So in other words, we're pulling from the guys that are in Dallas area. We're pulling them from East Texas. We're pulling them from the Panhandle. We're pulling them from the area where we've got 9 troopers with 15 counties, right, to make this work. And so we really need an increase in personnel. Additionally, we've got a really cool, you know, I appreciate what the general was saying about watching out for people. Our troopers out there doing that same thing, I mean, within feet of cars passing by them. In 2006, we started what we call an in-car project, which is where we put a laptop in a trooper car, in a black and white, where he can communicate with communications. He has communications within the car, and it was the beginning of a program that actually got to a point where now we're 8 years into that, and we have troopers who don't know how to do it, what I did, which was to get out of the car and write a ticket by hand, because they're doing it behind, you know, and it's great connectivity, but the bad side is that they got their head down, they're looking at night, it's not good for their vision, it's distracting, right? So what we're trying to do is get the troopers back out of the car, because that's good interaction with the public, and he can watch oncoming traffic as well as the violator. The way we're making that happen is we've actually got a tablet project. We have a ruggedized Panasonic G1 ToughPad that has complete connectivity. It's got a barcode reader on it. It wirelessly talks to the car. The trooper can issue a warning or a citation and have it printed out in the car. He can scan your driver license, and the computer automatically runs that driver license for a warrants check to make sure your driver license is valid. He runs the 28, the return on the license plate. All that's brought in. He can bring it off of it. I don't get too detailed, but basically he can write a ticket from much more safely outside the vehicle, and that's a cool. That's a really neat capability of ours. It's very unique. They're very unique also in the sense that, you know, we're Texas. We are the best. You know, I run the commercial vehicle enforcement program for the chief. Right, and as a consequence of that, I have a lot of interaction with my counterparts around the country. And let's face it, we're not Rhode Island. This is a big deal. This is a really big deal. We do a great job for our guys do a great job for you, and the ability to be out in an area where there is no connectivity out. You know, I don't know how many times I lost connectivity on the way over here from Boston, but that trooper who's working that road still has the ability to work and communicate. Yeah, you know, even with those gaps, and that's a really unique capability of ours. So, you know, we have 3.5 million commercial crossings from Mexico into Texas every year. In fact, in Laredo, the World Trade Bridge is just over 1 million crossings at that one bridge every year. and we have about 52 points of entry into the state of Texas. So basically what we're doing is we've got 26 million people sharing the road together in a very complex, very diverse traffic pattern. And that's what we're combating. And you know, just if you weren't aware that we had that many, it's a lot. But I think I'll stop there.
You know, isn't it great to see our state employees and how passionate they are about their jobs? And thank you for your service and all of the patrol and DPS that are willing to put. They get out there, and it's not always exciting. And now we're sending them down into a dangerous situation where probably a lot of them didn't sign up for. And we're going to have to be creative how we do this. You know, ultimately, we as state leaders are going to have to decide how we're going to manage the border if it's going to be our responsibility, which is not what we're supposed to talk about today. But think about, do we need to have a different type of a trooper inside DPS? I mean, we've got to think thoughtfully about this. Technology is going to help us in a lot of ways, and we have to be smart. You know, thinking forward. Deb talked about sharing the information of what's going to happen with where these next where the drilling's going to be. And so TxDOT is doing that. I think they've signed a contract to try to, what I call, mine that data to help us know, okay, we've gotten behind the 8 ball, how do we keep from getting behind the 8 ball going forward? And if we're going to know certain major roadways need to be rehabbed beforehand or corrected, we need to get to that. That's the kind of thoughtfulness that we need to use to do this. Let me tell you real quickly about, you know, the general talks about he's going to take whatever money the state gives him and try to accomplish what he needs to do. We have a major problem in the state as far as infrastructure. Representative Darby and Senator Williams and others in this room have been leaders in helping us get the funding to do this. TxDOT gives us numbers about $4 billion annually that we're short for the budget, plus an additional $1 billion annually for what we call the energy sector roads, and that's what we're talking about out here. And not only is the state $1 billion short in energy sector related roadways, but your counties and local governments are $1 billion short as well. And so that's what we're having to address. You know, last session, you know, I'd like to pat ourselves on the back. We came up with $450 million for the biennium to go to energy sector roads. That was nice. You're seeing some work done because of that. But that's not what we need to do to provide for safety. $225 million went to the state. All of those projects have been let. They were primarily through the 3 major play areas. And then there were 191 counties out of the 254 that participated with the local $225 million. That's been a very cumbersome process, and I'm sorry it was ever set up the way it was. And all of you county officials, especially those that have the high frequency, I apologize for that. It's not something that, you know, I don't think I would have structured that way, but that's how it got structured. And we got to live with the rules, and we'll do better next time. We just got to get that money out to you. That's all there is to it. So we've got to get after and where we're going to raise the money, because it's not only the $1 billion here, it's a $4 billion annually that we have throughout the state and for interconnectivity. And that doesn't include all the continued growth that the big communities need. Prop 1 is something we're asking you to vote for. Deb talked about that. 1/2 of the amount of the severance taxes that are currently going into the Economic Stabilization Fund, and it's actually 50% of 75%, because that's the amount that comes, severance tax goes in the general revenue, sits in general revenue, the comptroller makes estimates, and any amount over what the severance tax raised in 1987 is lifted up, 25% stays there, 75% goes to the rainy day fund, Economic Stabilization Fund. And we're going to take 1/2 of that. We're going to have a mechanism that we can cut that spigot off if we need more money in the rainy day fund. The problem we've had is, even though we've had the worst economic crisis in 2011 that in my lifetime, in most of our lifetimes, we didn't want to use the rainy day fund. We didn't think it was raining. I thought it was raining pretty well, But that rainy day fund just sat there and grew, and because of the industry that we're talking about is continuing to grow. When we voted for the proposition that you're going to get to vote on in November, we were told we think that will raise $1.2 billion a year. That $1.2 billion goes towards that $5 billion, $4 billion generally, $1 billion energy related. That $1.2 billion is a pretty good bite to that. I was told yesterday they think it's more, quite frankly, going to be $1.7 billion annually. That's an amazing opportunity. And with that, there will still be, even if that's, and if you vote November 4th for that, and that's when we're having the gubernatorial election and everything else, if you vote for that, within just a very few weeks, that money will actually go to TxDOT. And for those of y'all that don't like toll roads, although I haven't seen any out here, none of that money can be used towards toll or to create debt. Why are we short on money? Gas prices at the pump have been rather high. Well, let me tell you very quickly why that is. The state of Texas primarily gets their their revenue for transportation in two ways. It's from motor fuels tax and your registration fees. Registration fees have not been increased since about 1985. They've been played with a little bit, and that's about $50, and your local counties can put $10 on top. Some counties have asked us to allow them to do $10 on top of that so that they could use locally to help with projects. If you don't have a lot of people in your county, you're not going to get a lot of revenue from that though. So that's registration fees. The other portion is the motor fuel tax. The federal government has an 18.4 cent motor fuel tax on every gallon. I'm just going to talk about gasoline. And then the Texas has a 20 cents gas tax. They're flat tax. So every gallon you get, 18.4 cents goes to the federal government. And do y'all think we get all? Well, I got to be careful. We don't get 100% on return what we send to Washington. We're considered one of the donor states, which doesn't surprise probably most of us. And we've been a donor state for a long time. The money comes back to us, and how it gets sent back to us is the federal government has to authorize that. And last week they reauthorized it. We were about to the point where we were told that very quickly we weren't going to get our share of federal dollars because they ran out of money. Because they pay out, does it surprise you? They pay out more than they take in. It doesn't surprise me, but that's what happens. So that money that'll be coming to us, they authorized it till May of 2015. Now, how do you plan future roads that sometimes takes 2, 3, 6 years to build when you don't know what's going to happen, when you can't consistently rely on that source of funds? I wish they would just quit taking our tax money and leave it here, or send it back in block and let us take care of it, but that's another discussion we can have with the congressman. Texas's gas tax, that 20 cents, by Constitution, a quarter of that, or 25%, goes to schools right off the top. So the remaining 15 cents is what goes in the highway fund. DPS gets, let me get my numbers right here. DPS was taking about $2.2 billion out of that in a biennium to pay for DPS. Constitution says we can do that. It says that motor fuels tax can be used to build roads and to police roads. But we hear everybody says, well, that's a diversion you shouldn't do. Well, I think most everything besides the border stuff he was talking about policing and the roadway safety. But we have committed, and Drew Darby did a great job. We reduced that amount from $2.2 billion biannually to $1.8 billion for this 2014-2015 biennium. So we reduced by $400 million that we had to take out of general revenue to pay for DPS. The Speaker of the House and his what I call the financial leadership team, we just asked for money and they're trying to get roads built. They're the ones that have to go find it. They've got the harder job. They've committed to take away the rest of that $1.8 billion. So we are working hard to try to be wise stewards of your dollars to do that. Get back to motor fuels tax. When gas prices go up, we get less money because people drive less. Everybody in here, your vehicle, unless you went from a car to a pickup, gets better gas mileage than the one before. The electric vehicles, I don't think y'all got many out here. They don't pay any gas tax at all. And so we have to rethink that. So we have a declining revenue or source of revenue to pay for roads. The federal government has the same problem. That's why their trust funds run out of money too. Every other state has the same problem that relies on gas tax. So we are going to have to find a replacement funds to use that. I mean, to supplement that, and that's why it's so important to pass this Prop 1. Some of y'all may not know this, that we borrowed about $18 billion to help pay for our roads the last decade. That's why you haven't heard so much crisis before, because we had bonds, and you approved them. They were approved by the voters, and all of those bond revenues or bond proceeds are spent now. They're basically all committed and spent, and we pay about $1 billion a year out of our TxDOT budget just to pay back debt. And so now it's time, we have to step up, and so I would wholeheartedly ask you to vote for Proposition 1 and keep challenging us, because your folks from out here, we hear loud and clear on the issue of energy sector roads, and that's why we got the $500 million. I started passing out pictures of the wrecks that we see, that I got them to send me some of the most amazing wrecks out here to show what we're talking about, to talk about the roads and to pass that out. You know, I wanted to, you know, I was trying to get $750 million instead of $450 million, but that's how it came out. And we need to continue towards that. With that, I'm going to, sorry to get in that long explanation, but I just think you need to know why we have this issue, because some people think, well, gosh, gas prices going up. We don't have a percentage gas tax. The state gas tax was last raised in 1991. The federal gas tax was last raised in 1993. And like I said, the registration fee has basically been static for many years as well. And guess what happens when the cost of building roads? You think they've stayed the same as they were in 1991? No, they haven't. So we have to make tough decisions going forward and be leaders if we're going to continue this this economic miracle of Texas that many of you are a great part of. I think we have I don't know if we have any more time left. We went a little bit long.
Take a couple minutes for some questions.
We got a couple minutes for some questions, the hard questions, the easy questions. We'll take the hard questions go at that end. Are y'all all still asleep from lunch? In the back. Yes, sir.
I've got a question. That Proposition 1, the money that just goes to TxDOT, is that going to TxDOT for highways, or did that come down to the county level as well?
That'll be Fund 6. It'll go through the formulas, and it will not. That's not county road money. That's state highway.
It's just state highway?
Yes, sir.
The only really real restriction on it is cannot be used on toll roads.
Okay. Is there any way that TxDOT can appropriate some of the money that they're currently giving to the counties under the heavy load, the wide load money? The counties get it, the cities get nothing from. Because, you know, we got city streets, and they're still being torn up by these large trucks, but yet the county gets the money, the cities get nothing. There's more population in the cities than there is in the county.
Well, and TxDOT's been trying to give you all those nice roads that we have through your cities back to you. No, I think it's important. That's an important point, and I think it's something that we've got to partner on and look at new and creative and imaginative ways. And I know our legislature's willing to do that too, because again, we're going to get a certain amount of money, and we're going to have to sit down and figure out how we can do this, why we can't. And so.
The reason I'm asking that is every city has been asked to sign and does sign, and then a local TxDOT to maintain the right-of-ways through the city and the streets and potholes and pick up the dead animals and all that. But the county gets the money, and that's what I'm just, you know, if there's any way that you can shift something to the cities, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Message received.
Thank you.
And of course, the counties are over here saying, "Don't do that." So, we all got to work together. It doesn't matter what part of Texas we are, because we're interconnected. But DPS, he could have shown you. It's pretty amazing to see the growth of the fatalities and wrecks in the energy sector areas, and to see that. And we've had committee meetings where we've had them come in and show it, and I think you've seen that as well. We're very concerned about that, and locally, I don't know. We're going to have to continue to work. I know as far as the industry here, they may not like some of the requests to have permitting or construction for asset off of county roads, but the Attorney General's office last year did issue opinions for counties to do that. So it certainly would be, I'll be around and feel free to talk to anybody about that. And
Could I make just one more point, Chairman, real quick? Just, the Chairman was talking about, I just want to remind everybody that 40% of TxDOT's budget comes from the federal government through reimbursements. And TxDOT, and in the Highway Trust Fund, in Texas, our state of Texas provides about 10% of that Highway Trust Fund. Well, we get back about 7.5% on that 10%. And for a state who, of the 1,800 rigs in this country, 50% of them are in this state producing energy to help make our country energy. We need to put the pressure on, I think, at the federal level to give us some relief, to at least give us back what we put in. And then I would just like to end with safety. DPS and TxDOT, I can assure you, are hooked at the hip on this. Now, I don't believe people pay much attention to signs and slogans, particularly now that they got these, because they're paying attention to something else. But there is one thing that they do pay attention to, and that's a black and white out on the road. And if we can, and I'm a great supporter of more troopers for the state of Texas, all the growth that we're having, what we're doing, because I truly believe that's the best safety program TxDOT can have. It's more presence of our DPS on the roads and working very closely with them. Thank you.
well, thank you, panel.